Hi guys, in this video we're going to make a cake of the princess and the pea, only we're replacing the pea with a shoe, so it's the princess and the Prada cake today. So I'm going to start with a cake drum. This one's fairly large, so I've got an 18-inch drum, just so I've got plenty of space for my cake and a bit of furniture. And all I've done is I've marbled together some different shades of fondant. So I've got some grey, some pink, some light brown, just kind of marbled it together. So when you're marbling it together, just don't mix it together properly. And I'm just going to try and roll it so that the marbling kind of gives me long lengths of marbling. And we're just going to roll this out, and this is going to cover our board. So I've rolled it into a long strip. You'll see the marbling's not overly strong on it, but that's fine. And I'm going to cut off any extra from around the edge. Now, it hasn't fully covered my board, so I'm going to save my offcuts on my other half. So I did roll out some more. I didn't use the whole piece in one go to place it on the other side. Now, I've probably mixed the fondant together a little bit too much. So the marbling's not as obvious here. Again, just trim off all the extra from around the edges. And then we're going to texture the board. So you can do this by hand if you want, but I'm just going to kind of cheat and use an impression mat. So you can get lots of different impression mats that create a wood grain effect. I'll put links in the description box below for this one that I've used. I'm going to separate it into panels, and I'm just using the side of the ruler to press in to give the impression of panels. Then we're going to add a little bit of colour to the edges. So I want a kind of grey, so I'm using black powder. You can mix it with white powder, or you can mix it with corn flour and just go lightly on the edges of your board with that. Again, I'll put links in the description box below to what I've used. Now, for this particular cake, we're going to need a model on the top. Usually I show you guys making the models by hand. Today I'm going to show you it using a mold, so a little bit easier for you because we're going to push some paste into the mold. I think it's probably about 30 grams of paste that's gone in there. You're going to give it 5-10 minutes to firm up, and then you're going to pop it out of the mold. Now, the mold is actually the mold that I made myself, and these are available on my website. Again, I'll put links below. You will need a modeling paste rather than fondant because the fondant will be a little bit soft. And we're just going to add some colour to the face. So we're going to use some pinks. So again, just an edible powder on the cheeks, kind of eyelids a little bit. And then I can mix some of the pink with a little bit of dipping solution or clear alcohol to create a paint for the lips. Excuse my messy hair in shot. Now our eyes are going to stay closed, so we're just going to add some eyelashes to the bottom of each eye. Now if you want sort of more detailed descriptions on making the face, I do have another video on just using the face molds, which I'll put a link up to here. So I've got some black modelling paste and I've rolled it thin at one end, and we're going to stick it across the bottom of each eye. We're going to trim that off with the craft knife at a diagonal on both eyes. And for our eyebrows, we're going to do the same kind of thing again. So we've got a nice thin point at one end, and we trim it off to the length we want the eyebrow to be. Now let's make her a little body. So starting with a teardrop, we'll pinch her neck into the fat end of the teardrop. And we'll start playing around with the shape slightly, pressing in at the tummy and above the chest, pushing in between the boobs. And I'm just going to round all that off a little bit with my fingers. Put a little mark in at the base of the neck and across for the collarbones. And we'll give those 10 minutes to firm up while we start working on some pillows for our bed. So again, I'm using modelling paste. You can use fondant if you prefer now for the pillows because it's a much bigger piece. They will sag a little bit if the fondant, but you can always add a little bit of tylose. And I'm just pinching it all the way around the edges, kind of a rectangle shape. Keeping it chunky in the middle and thinning it at the edges. I'm going to put some crease lines in, just using the edge of my Dresden tool. And I'm going to try and sit it upright so it stays on its own. If not, you can just rest a bit of fondant at the back. So you can see I've just rested some fondant there at the back of it to hold it up. And we're going to do some smaller versions of this. Keep them a little bit squarer. And we'll put the crease lines so they all go towards the middle. And then we can add a round little ball in the middle of each one. You can always add stitching line around the outside edge for a bit more detail. And then we'll pop those either side. So you can create a variety of shapes for the cushions. So I've gone with some round ones, some others that are square, and then I've just kind of painted them with some edible metallic paints as well. Again, I'll put descriptions below for where you can get hold of the metallic paints. And you can just keep going with as many different shapes and sizes with these pillows. Now I've just pushed the skewer that was in her head down through the body, and we're going to make her a little top. A pyjama tops. Let's go for a vest. So I've rolled out some pink. This is modelling paste this time. I've tried to cut like a bit of a curve for where the neck's going to go, and then a curve either side for the armpits. I'll connect it around the back. We're not going to see the back of her because she's going to be leant against the pillow. And then we can just check the head fits on in place. We can push the neck up here. She's going to be having hair that covers all this, so I'm not too worried at the moment if we see that. And I'm just going to try and pop it on some polystyrene to firm up while we work on the actual cake itself. And just be careful you don't squash the top when you're picking her up. Now we're going to make her some little arms. So I've rolled thin some skin tone, again in my modelling paste. And I'm just going to cut a little thumb out from the side of each of these. So we've pressed the end down with our finger. We've cut out a little triangle for the thumb. I'm going to cut these down a little bit shorter, and I'm going to roll them thin where I want the elbow to go, and I'm going to try and position them against her. Now I think she's going to be holding a bottle of champagne later, so let's try and position the arm so there's a little gap so we can slot something in there later. You'll see I've just bulked out in front of her tummy with a bit more pink modelling paste, and let's hold the arm in place there with just a ball of pink. We can remove that later. So now for the hair, I've got some real pale yellow pieces. We're just going to roll kind of an oval shape for the back, and then some kind of carrot shapes that are just slightly flattened for the front pieces. So we've cut a couple of strips of hair into them. Just put some lines in with the Dresden tool. I should be able to twist them around in place. Again, this is modelling paste that I'm using. This is the Saracino one. Again, I'll put links below the video so you guys can see what it is I'm using. And I want to try and bend it so it kind of covers her shoulder slightly, because I haven't got rid of the join between the shoulder of her arm and the body itself. So we want to make sure the hairline covers that up. You can put individual pieces on if you want. Just make sure you stick it down with a bit of water to hold it in place. One last one just on there. I think I'll just curl this one up at the end. Yeah, I think I'm happy with that hair. While she's setting, I'm going to create my cake. So I want a rectangular shape because we're going for mattresses now. A mattress shape. So I'm going to cut a cake card to the size that I want. I'm going to actually cut 2 of these because I want the bed nice and tall. So I've got 2 of these boards the same now. We're going to cover them in buttercream, and then I'm going to put my cake on here. Now you can make squares of cake and then cut them into the rectangles. You don't have to have a rectangular tin. You can see that I've cut mine to shape. And we're going to layer the buttercream in between. And it's up to you really how tall you want to go. I've also put a bit of jam on there. And then let's add our next layer. Now I want my bed to be nice and tall, but the taller you go, the more it's going to kind of squash. So I'm going to try and get it to no taller than about 6 inches, and then I'll make another one exactly the same. So another rectangle of piled up cakes, and then we will stack them together. So once you've done it, I want you to completely cover it in a chocolate ganache. You can use buttercream if you want, but I've gone for chocolate ganache. So a white chocolate ganache, just because it sets a little bit firmer. And can you see I've done my second cake exactly the same. One is slightly shorter than the other one, so not as tall, but that's fine. I'm pushing in some plastic dowels so that they hold up the other tier. Now you can replace them for wooden dowels. It's not a problem to use the wooden dowels instead for this. Just make sure that they touch the bottom of the cake. So these dowels go from top to bottom of the cake. Then I'm going to put a little bit of chocolate ganache around each one so that when we stick these together, it holds in place. So I'm going to let those set together, and then we're going to stick it onto our cake drum. Now I'm going to put it slightly off center so that I've got room to add a bit of furniture and bedroom scenery. Once I feel it's gone on there firmly, I'm rolling some thick strips of fondant. So modeling chocolate also works quite well for this and tastes quite nice if you're not as keen on the fondant, because there is quite a bit of fondant on this one. But you can cut this off when you cut the cake into pieces. You don't have to eat all the fondant. So I'm trying to go with different coloured strips each time. I've added some piping gel because it's nice and sticky, so it'll make them stick to the cake. So I'm just going to keep going up, keep adding creases in the edge so it looks like the mattresses are kind of a little bit creased and scrunched up. And then we can roll thin some fondant in. I'm going to go for white for this. So it looks like the odd blanket or sheet kind of coming out from between the layers. Now my very top layer, I haven't worried about being as neat with, because we're going to cover the top itself up with the duvet. And can you see my piece of fondant isn't quite long enough? We'll cover that up later as well. I'm going to transfer my lady onto the top. Now I'm going to add a bit of fondant on here. So you'll see she's kind of some weird mermaid. She's just got one thick leg in white. I've turned up the end so it looks like feet, but obviously you're not going to see this. I'm going to add another piece of white, really quite thin, to cover my join in that little missing bit there. I'm going to add another one at the other side. This one's not to tidy anything up, it's just that I wanted to add another sheet at the other side. And then we've got a slightly thicker one. This time I've gone for cream. And this one's going to be the cover. So you just need to make sure it's slightly bigger than the top of the cake. And we can try and crease that around until you're happy with the position that it's fallen in. For her champagne bottle, I've taken some black modelling paste. We're going to roll it into a cylinder. And then at one end, we're going to try and thin it a little bit. And then we're going to cut a little bit off because it's going to get quite long. Then we're going to take a thin piece of black again. It's a little sausage shape, just wrapped around the top. Then what we're going to do is stick some more detailing on. So I've got a little strip of black, flat this time, not rounded like the bit we just put on earlier. Bring it down to a V at the front. Then we want a really thinly rolled piece of white. I'm using modelling paste because it's easier to roll that nice and thin. Just stick that on the front for our label. And if you want to put any kind of patterning or writing on, you can do. I'm just using a pen because it's a bit easier. But I've put squiggles because I'm not very neat at writing. Then let's add a bit of colour to the top bit. So above the kind of black triangle mark that I've made, I'm going to paint it all in gold. And we'll just put a tiny bit just below it as well. Again, excuse my scraggy hair in shot. And then you can leave that to one side and we'll put it in place under her arm later on. So I'm going to pop under there her little modelling paste champagne bottle. I'm going to stick that on with a tiny bit of piping gel just under her hand. And then you can add any patterning that you want to the mattresses and all the sheets. So I'm going with a white pen. I want something quite subtle. I wanted to keep it all pastel, so I've gone for a white pen. It is very subtle though. This one is not too obvious. I should have maybe even gone for a slightly brighter colour. Now just to finish off the rest of the bedroom, I'm going to make a rug. So I'm kind of rolling a square with rounded corners, just in white. This is just fondant now. If you want, you can add tylose to firm it up a little bit. And then we're just going to add lines so it looks more like a rug, a furry rug. So I tried a few different things on here to try and get the texture. One with scissors, one with my knife, and then also with the Dresden tool. I think the Dresden tool worked best. You can just add a little bit of colour by adding powder just to the edges so it's not too flat looking. I didn't want it too white, so we've just gone with a slightly cream around the edges, just with a big dusting brush and dry edible food dust on here. So I'm just going to place this on my cake drum. I'm going to leave space for some furniture either side. And I'm just going to add some patterning now to the duvet. I've gone for a rose gold. Again, one of the edible paints. So these you just mix with water. I'm just using a small balling tool to kind of put on the dots. And then where I folded over the sheet, I'm going to paint it in the solid rose gold colour. So you can still eat this paint. Let's put some matching dots on some of the mattresses. And then I've made some furniture as well. Now, because it's quite a long video, I'm going to put furniture in a separate video for you guys. And then you can pick and choose what kind of furniture you want to dress your bedroom with. But the furniture is actually really nice and easy to make. And it does look really effective and goes well with this video. Now, I do actually have a little handbag video that I made quite a long time ago. Let's make a messy bedroom. Let's turn her into a princess. Let's give her a little crown. So we'll paint that up in gold. And then I've made some little shoes and boots. Now, I haven't filmed every part of this, so I'm going to leave some of it up to you guys to create some of your own accessories. But there will be a video on some other furniture, so keep an eye out for that soon. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, be sure to hit the thumbs up button and leave me a comment below. You can see more of my tutorials by clicking on the images on screen now. If you haven't already, make sure you click the subscribe button to stay up to date with my future tutorials. There are also links in the description box below where you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and more.